Hello, today I'm with Vijoo Krishnan from India. Hello, Vijoo. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet up with us virtually. Could you quickly introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Vijoo Krishnan. I am the Joint Secretary of All India Kisan Sabha, or All India Peasants Union, you could say, which is the oldest organization of peasantry in India, pan-Indian organization, started in 1936 and having more than 20 million members.
And so there were 2 days of nationwide strike in India happening yesterday and the day before. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Actually, we had a historic strike on 28th and 29th, where all the central trade unions came together, the working class, as well as the organization of peasantry, the farmers, the agriculture, labor coming together and on the demands of the working class as well as the peasantry. The 4 labor codes that were brought by the Narendra Modi-led BJP government, which literally snatches away the hard-won rights of the working class. The working class were out on protests on those seeking the withdrawal of these labor codes. The peasantry, the agriculture labor were on protest in with their own demands, like the issue of remunerative price for our crops, to also ensure that the corporatization of agriculture, which is going on, that is resisted. Social security, comprehensive social security measures for the agriculture labor, relief for the people who have lost incomes and jobs during the COVID pandemic and the following lockdown, and ensuring food security and such issues.
And what's the current state of the agriculture sector in India? Is it dominated by small farmers, or is it more like large agribusiness exploitations?
Yeah, in India, agriculture is dominated by the smallholder peasantry. And even when you say smallholder peasantry, for someone sitting in Europe or the Americas or other continents, it is quite difficult to understand the situation, because even when I say smallholder farmers, cultivators, it is less than 5 acres, holding of less than 5 acres being a big number of cultivators, and also a sizable section who don't have any land but are tenant cultivators, cultivating land by leasing in land belonging to the landowners. So that is the situation as far as the farmers in our country are concerned. And over the last many years, the policies of the neoliberal economic policies that the different governments have implemented in our country has led to a situation where the farmers are facing an acute agrarian crisis. And since 1995, according to the government figures, more than 4 lakh people, 400,000 farmers and agriculture labor in distress have been forced to commit suicide. This is you will not find such an instance in the entire history of humankind, where a section of society, a section which actually is producing wealth, is forced to commit suicide because they are not getting proper price for their crops. The costs of cultivation are increasing. The government is not extending support to the farming community, and they are pushed into a debt trap, which is forcing them into committing suicide. The farm incomes also have been falling. If you look at the present Prime Minister in 2014 promised that farm incomes would be doubled by 2022. But the government figures recently say the average earning per farmer per day from cultivation of crops is only as a meager 27 rupees. So that is how the incomes are also shrinking in a big way as far as farmers of our country are concerned. That is the situation that we are facing.
And you were talking about neoliberal policies and also corporatization of the agriculture sector coming from the Indian government. And a couple of years ago, India pulled out of the RCEP trade deal, and RCEP is like a regional trade deal encompassing 15 countries in Asia Pacific. What role did farmers play in this decision of the Indian government?
I would like to go a little further into this issue, because way back in 98 itself, India went into a free trade agreement with Sri Lanka, a small state neighboring our own country. And our experience has been that led to the inflow of different crops to India, especially spices, tea, coconut, and such products coming in good amounts to India, leading to a price crash. Cheaper produce coming from Sri Lanka, leading to a price crash. And in the state of Kerala, in the south of India, where I come from, it led to a huge crisis. It led to a crash for the farmers there, and leading to distress, indebtedness, and also suicides. With this experience at our hand, our government still went ahead with the South Asian Free Trade Agreement, as well as the India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. So with the India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, you had the dumping or the import of cheap products, especially rubber, coffee, tea, pepper, and other spices coming in, also palm oil and so on, which literally destroyed the farmers of states like Kerala. So that is so we have this experience at hand. It is in such circumstances that the RCEP negotiations were going on. Simultaneously, you had the India-European Union free trade agreement being negotiated, and a host of such free trade agreements being negotiated. Each one of these, you would note, is totally without any transparency, lacks transparency. There is no discussion with the state governments. There is no discussion with the stakeholders here about the need for such free trade agreements. That is what we are witnessing in each of them. The RCEP, we noted that would also affect not just the agricultural producers cultivating commercial crops like spices, coffee, or tea, but also in a big way the dairy farmers. In India, the earnings from milk production is actually complementing, helping the farmers to at least in some way break even and overcome the crisis to a certain extent. Millions of farmers, a big number of whom are women, are into dairy farming. And that section is going to be affected when you have milk and milk products coming in a big way. So that was one reason why organizations like ours, coordinating with many other organizations, opposed the Regional Comprehensive Economic, the RCEP. So, for instance, if you take the case of Australia or New Zealand, which has a glut or an overproduction in milk and milk products, this coming into India, cheap or dumping into India, is going to lead to a big crisis for the poor milk dairy farmers of our country. That is why we opposed the RCEP. There were protests. The government initially was uh, unwilling to accept the issues raised by the farmers, but with some electoral defeats or setbacks just before the RCP was to be finalized, the Prime Minister, who went all the way to Thailand, had to say that India is not going to sign the RCP. But however, once that position has been taken, we also find simultaneously there are negotiations with United States, European Union, different Southeast Asian countries, Australia, and so on. So the government is still working within the neoliberal paradigm.
Yes, it seems like
yeah,
it seems like since India pulled out of the RCEP a couple of years ago, the government has renewed its interest in bilateral free trade agreements. You mentioned the Australia free trade agreement.
Yes,
is announced. We're talking about Canada as well, the UK. India recently signed a trade deal with UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Also talking about relaunching the free trade deal with the European Union. So it seems like the voices of the farmers haven't been heard during the RCEP moment, even though India pulled out of the agreement. So what do farmers have to lose with all these bilateral negotiations?
No, during the RCEP issue, the Prime Minister also said the other free trade agreements, including the India-ASEAN free trade agreement, would be also reviewed. And those on the left, organizations like ours, we had been in the forefront of protests against the India-ASEAN free trade agreement. In the state of Kerala, which is the most affected by the ASEAN free trade agreement, there was a human chain from one end of the state to the other end, almost 600-kilometer human chain, with millions of people being part of the human chain. Today, after many years of the implementation of the ASEAN free trade agreement, even the organizations and political parties which were in favor of the ASEAN free trade agreement are realizing how it has had an adverse impact on farmers in our country. For instance, the rubber farmers. Every year, due to the price crash, the farmers are losing thousands and thousands of crores because of the price crash. Because you are having cheaper rubber coming in or from the Southeast Asian countries. So here there is no protection, and the Indian farmers are directly tied to the volatility of the world market prices. And there is absolutely no effort towards price stabilization so that the farmers are at least breaking even. They don't, at least they earn a little more than the cost of production. Nothing of that sort is happening. That is pushing the farmers into a crisis. We have been mobilizing these farmers. Crop-based organizations also are coming up and building broader unity with all sections, issue-based unity against the free trade agreements, which are leading to adverse impact on the farmers of our country.
And so do you think, because this India-Australia interim free trade deal has been announced and there's been news that it might be signed in the next few weeks, and do you think, or do you know if agriculture is included in those interim negotiations or early harvest negotiations?
See, that is where I said that total lack of transparency. What is being negotiated? What is on the negotiating table? That is not even informed in the parliament. Even the parliament, which is making the legislations in our country, is not informed that what is being discussed, let alone political organizations or organizations of the farmers. So that is the situation. But as far as the Australia is concerned, surely the vegetables, lentils, nuts, and dairy is an important sector, though they say the sensitive issues are as of now set aside. They say, for instance, milk, wheat, and beef is set aside as of now. These are the information that we are getting from the media. If you look at the discussions going on in Australia, it is also talking about first you get India into a early harvest agreement or an interim agreement, then into a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, and also nudge India into acceding to the RCEP. So it is entirely in the paradigm of the free trade, and the concerns of the poor farmers of India is totally ignored by these players. One another factor, Nicholas, just another factor which I would like to, that it is never an equal playing field. It is extremely unequal playing field, that Indian farmers who receive much lesser subsidies than, say, in Australia or New Zealand or Japan or European Union and the United States and so on, are put in so-called competition with the poor farmers of India, are put in competition with these big agricultural players in the developed world.
And maybe just a last question, you said there will be opposition against these future deals. Are there any action scheduled, concrete action scheduled in the next few weeks in India against these trade deals?
See, we have just had a prolonged struggle against the 3 anti-farmer acts, which were literally further liberalizing the agriculture sector. And it was a successful struggle at great human cost, where more than 750 farmers were killed in the course of this struggle, became martyrs in this course of struggle. So that clear message is there to the government ruling the present political party ruling our country. So in coming days, we have had a preliminary meeting a few days back about all the organizations of the farmers. And in coming days, we will take decision as to how to go about building resistance to this. Surely, this is going to be resisted in our country. It is not going to go unchallenged. And the government is pushing through some of these free trade agreements without any discussion, without any democratic discussion at all. That will be resisted on the ground by the people of our country.